I want to welcome everyone to the May 5th, 2021 Education Compact meeting, the meeting between the Office of the Mayor, the City Council, and also members of the school board as well. It's been a while since we last got together, so I'm glad that we're able to get together and chat a little bit about what's in store for our children and our families, and our love for public education and all the service that we wrap around our children in this great city. Here's tonight's agenda. Where you will see some updates from the Office of the Mayor, from Education and Human Services Committee of City Council, from Richmond Public Schools. There will also be a presentation discussion about the RPS calendar proposal and reopening as well. I don't know whether or not that is, I guess that is for May 5th as well. And
Sorry, Mayor. That's an error. I apologize. The discussion tonight is purely about school construction. This is.
I was like, something
everybody.
wasn't right, I thought.
Yep. Sorry about that.
I don't want to be like Ron Burgundy and just read what's on the screen. You know what I mean? The third item on the agenda will be a presentation and discussion about new school construction, and then we will have a closeout with next steps. And so with that, I'll hand it over to Eva Colin, who is the director of our Office of Children and Families, to talk a little bit about what's going on with Parks and Rec and summer updates.
Good
Eva?
morning. Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor. And again, I apologize for that oversight on that agenda. I plugged and played and forgot to double check. So this summer, we have a quick update from our office and from our partners over at Parks and Rec. We want to share that pools will be open this summer. We've seen a lot of questions about this. Parks and Rec Community Facilities is evaluating the feasibility of opening pools in a limited capacity before the normal seasonal opening, but they're in the process of hiring lifeguards and getting those up and going. Have great places for our kids to play this summer. They will be following COVID precautions as recommended by CDC for similar facilities. And also registration for summer camp will open on Tuesday, May 18th at noon. So I'm going to run through a quick just list of those summer programs so folks have an opportunity to check those out and share those back with their constituencies. If you want additional information, Parks and Rec does have a kind of a newsletter and flyer to share as well. So there will be summer play camp for ages 6 to 12. This is a program. This is a registration-based program. The locations, the community centers where this will be hosted are listed on the screen. This will run June 28th to August 20th from 8 to 3. And this again is for city residents. Non-city residents can attend, but with an additional cost. If there is if cost is a barrier, we encourage you to just share that with Parks and Rec. They work with families to make sure that all families can attend these programs. There will also be pop-up summer programs. These are free. They're held completely outdoors. This is weather permitting. This was something that was an innovation during COVID last summer. It's ages 6 to 12. Basically, you can show up and play with friends under supervision from 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. And the locations, again, are on the screen for this as well. Of course, because it's outside only, if it's rainy, they will not be held. Finally, Pine Camp is doing their outdoor camp adventure, and each 2-week session is $60 per child. The sessions are available there. Now, again, do encourage everybody to go to the Parks and Rec social media and website to get more information and with that, I will hand it back to you, Mayor, to facilitate it over to Councilmember Lynch.
So I'm so confused as to where we are, but
I think someone needs to mute their, I don't know who that might be, but someone needs to mute
hello?
Hey, Councilwoman, I think that was you. Maybe you need to, I was asking someone to mute because somebody was talking just a minute ago and didn't want the hot mic to be exposed to everyone, every and all. So that's all I was asking, Councilwoman Lynch.
I was trying to get a handle on a paper. In any case, thanks, Mr. Mayor. So we, thank you to my wonderful co-pilot, Chairwoman Burke. We've been moving along on some of the most important issues to our city that impact our EHS portfolio. We've had a variety of special meetings to include those on homelessness. We're having a special meeting this Thursday, tomorrow at 2 p.m. On the gun violence prevention and safety and the health and well-being of our communities topic. And we're looking forward to hearing from community members and other stakeholders to present some models that are being done in other localities. We are also looking forward to hearing from our Office of the Commonwealth's Attorney, as well as our local Department of Health. And we are moving forward as well on our vacant parcels that we have. Mr. Mayor, I know that the last time that we spoke, we were discussing what and how to move forward on our vacant parcels. So we are looking forward to submitting that paper and having that before the committee to discuss the transfer of those parcels and get community input on what to do. And that's thanks to the good work of our two co-chairs, or our chair of the vacant school parcels, Jonathan Young, school board member Young. So I want to thank him for his work on that. So we're moving forward on a number of items, but most importantly, and to us, and I know to my colleague in the 5th District, what's most pressing at the moment, and it hasn't changed for us since both of us came into office, is the safety and the wellness of our trauma impacted communities. And so many of our community members are hurting right now and really need to wrap our arms and our angel wings around them. And so we're looking at ways to do that. But that is something that touches every one of our districts, and certainly touches all of our school children who have been impacted by trauma and by gun violence. And that's a problem for us all to solve and come around the table on. So, we're looking forward to having that meeting on Thursday. We're looking forward at funding and investing in some solutions and putting our money where our hearts are and finding a way. So that's all I have. Any questions?
Are there any questions for Councilwoman Lynch? Seeing none, but before we go to Superintendent Chambers, I just want to say that when it comes to the work that we'll be doing in Parks and Recreation this coming summer, I want to remind everyone that we will continue to adhere to all safety guidelines per the CDC and the Richmond City Health District as well, to ensure that our children, those who work for Parks and Recreation, and their families can be safe throughout the entirety of the summer. We are obviously, the numbers are looking better for the city in terms of vaccinations, but we still have a ways to go, but at least we can truly see the light at the end of the tunnel. And I think that's a perfect segue for Superintendent Chambers and what we can look forward to as the fall will be upon us as well. Mr. Chambers.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good afternoon, everyone. Chair Burke, Vice Chair Young, President Newbill, Vice President Robertson, and board members and council members. It's wonderful to see all of you. I will be brief. 3 updates. First, most excitingly, thrilled to share that our class of 2021 will be graduating at the Diamond this June. We are so excited to be able to have them all together. We'll have masks and distancing and all that, but this will actually be the first time the class of 2021 has been together all year. And it may actually be the last time that they are all together. So we really want to make it special to celebrate them for their perseverance this year. And as we have discussed, we are optimistic that the number of graduates who will be attending this event will be higher than ever before in recent memory. So we are just absolutely thrilled. I want to say thank you to Parney and the Squirrels organization for their partnership on this event. Second, we have a really exciting summer program set up for our kids pre-K to 12. The theme is the Summer Olympics. So we have all kinds of exciting academic and other competitions going on. Our goal is to enroll 4,000 students, which is about 4 times what we normally have. So we're working very hard to enroll those young people. We're starting with a group of students that has been identified based on some unfinished learning over the past year. And if we have additional spots, we'll open it up to everybody else. So very excited about that. And then, of course, working around the clock to prepare for our fall reopening, where we are welcoming everybody back to in-person instruction 5 days a week. We are hopeful that by the fall, the vaccine will be available not just down to 12 years old, as the CDC just announced, but actually down to 6 years old or even younger. So there's a good shot that all of our kids and all of our staff can be vaccinated by the time we reopen on September 8th. But even if they don't, we'll have all kinds of mitigation strategies in place, doing lots of air quality upgrades. We'll have masks, distancing where we can, and lots of other things to make sure that our schools are healthy and safe for our kids, not just physically, but also in terms of mental health as well. For any family that, for medical reasons, feels it is not wise to send their children back, we will have a virtual option, pre-K through 12. Pre-K through 5, we will be running our own virtual academy, and 6 to 12, we will be using the state's virtual Virginia program. So we have options for everybody, no matter what your need is for your family, but we are just excited to be back and looking forward to seeing everybody in person. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Cameron, and thank you for your hard work. And while we're here on RPS updates, I thought it'd be a good idea that we give Mr. Young an opportunity to talk about the Vacant Properties Committee and the work there, and if there's any updates for the compact. Mr. Young.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. And I'd be remiss if I didn't begin by conveying my gratitude to City Council and to you, sir, and to your team, because we're most excited about your biennial report. And as I understand, the Old Oak Grove property is at the top of the list and will be the very first to be solicited for development opportunities. So I know I speak for all my colleagues, and one of my colleagues in particular who were most excited and grateful for that. As relates to VPC, we did at our meeting on Monday agree to recommendations to include properties that we have already surplus, but are interested in expediting for the purpose of city soliciting bids to include Moore Street, 13 acres, but also the Real School on Chamberlain Avenue, 4929, and we voted to proceed with the city have an opportunity to surplus and to sell that property. I should note that our inventory includes additional properties to include, most recently, the Vacant Property Committee discussed the Norrell Annex, and at the risk of speaking out of order, I think that the consensus of the group, though the committee's objective is just to identify findings and not submit recommendations, still, I think the consensus was largely very favorable in support of perhaps the city doing something like what I just spoke to at the Real School. And also, I believe it's important to note that the school board recommended that the VPC begin our work pertinent to the current technical center campus, the Richmond Technical Center campus, with the expectation perhaps that would be another property that could be surplus to the city for sale. We are most excited about the opportunity at Altria, the Altria building, and again, grateful to you, Mr. Mayor, and to council for what you have proposed relevant to a spend plan there and redeveloping that site. We do have a findings report that includes more exhaustive information, but be my pleasure contingent on your wishes, sir, if you'd like me to entertain any questions.
Yes, are there any questions for Mr. Young when it pertains to the vacant properties update? Councilwoman Jordan?
And Mr. Young, it's great to see you here. And I really do love this format of being able to see our counterparts on school board. So I'll get right to my question. The Moore Street building, that is a very historic, property. And I just would like you to know, as well as superintendent and others on this call, that the community does have a vested interest in what that use will be, as well as Principal Giles. And I've had some conversations with them. And so just, again, please keep us in the loop, because we, very much have thoughts about what we want in that building. And I want to make sure it's a community-driven project. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Well said.
Any other questions for Mr. Young? I was going to add, Mr. Young, that first, thank you for bringing a business-minded approach to this process, and thank you for working alongside those at the City Council and also in the administrative level as well. Additionally, you are correct. We are prioritizing the property at the old Oak Grove, where I've heard many times over before, walking through the community over there in Oak Grove, that this should be a priority, and it will be a priority on our side of things. So thank you for working with us, and we look forward to the work moving forward. And last but not least, I want to add that a big thank you to Mr. Cameras and your team over at RPS, providing a graduation, a live graduation for our graduating seniors. They deserve it. They deserve it. We are still in a pandemic. I feel good about us surviving the pandemic, but this has been tough on a lot of our young people. They've done everything they can to learn online in this format, and I think they are just deserving of a graduation. So I want to thank you again, but also I want to thank our partners over at the Flying Squirrels for accommodating our young people and Richmond Public Schools moving forward. This is the sort of partnership I think you need to ensure that our kids get the best. And if Henrico and Chesterfield can do it, heck, Richmond can do it as well. So thank you for that. We are now going to segue into section 3 of our agenda, that is the new school construction. I want to begin with the fact that I just truly believe that we, as the governing entities of this city, we owe our community the facts. There have been a lot of information that has been out there, whether in the media or in meetings. And there's also been a lot of misinformation out there as well. I think what we owe to our community is the facts. And I think that we can use tonight as a great opportunity to get all on the same page. And so tonight we're going to hear from those from my administration involved in the construction of public schools. I believe we'll hear from Mr. Cameras as well. And so I want to not waste any time. I will hand it over to those at the city to talk about the current approach to building public schools in the city of Richmond.
Mayor, I'll start with this slide, and then I'll hand it over to Mr. Stone to talk through how his team manages in partnership with Betty's team with procurement. So in 2018, the school board voted to collaborate with the city of Richmond on the construction of schools through the joint construction team. This came about after the city council voted to approve a meals tax, which would finance the building of new schools. The joint construction team is a body that held, until recently, weekly public meetings. These are public meetings, and they are held weekly and is composed of the following. Representation from Richmond Public Schools included the school board chair and vice chair, the superintendent, chief operating officer, and director of facilities. Anybody from Richmond Public Schools, of course, could attend, as it was an open public meeting. From the city, the mayor's chief of staff, the chief administrative officer, and city staff from departments such as procurement, public works, and public utilities attended these meetings. This body ensured that the school board maintained control over new school design, while the city maintained responsibility for procurement and construction, but had a regular collaboration point so that nothing moved forward without the approval of this team. Additionally, several city agencies outside of the joint construction team support new school construction. This includes the Office of Community Wealth Building and the Office of Minority Business Development. The Office of Community Wealth Building, for instance, helped contractors and subcontractors identify qualified residents for these jobs. And the Office of Minority Business Development also worked to make sure that there were representation from Black and brown businesses in the contractor and subcontractor pool. Mayor, if you'd like, I think we have Ms. Foster from the Office of Minority Business Development to share any work that she's done, or if you'd like to hear from them, or if you'd like to move forward, we can do that too.
Yeah, let's hear from Ms. Foster. If Pat Foster is with us this evening, we can hear from Ms. Foster.
Good evening. I was having a little bit of an issue unmuting my system. We are always excited to be a part of a large project because it really does help build the capacity of minority businesses overall, which at the same time will help the city by building up equity in our Black and brown community. Now we assist in the project by setting goals on the project. We put minority participation goals, and we do this by looking at the scope of work and even helping to break down the scope of work to encourage the minority participation to be increased. After we put the goals on there, we also serve to monitor those goals to make sure that the people that said that they were going to meet the goals will actually meet them as it relates to our subcontractors. And we do this by both desk monitoring, and we actually go out to the fields and make sure that the work is being done by minorities as stated. We also help to make sure that we get the subcontractors get timely payments, because that's important, especially to small businesses. And we offer support throughout the projects. A lot of times the businesses don't know who to go to explain different things. And so our department serves as a support system as well. The project helped, this last school project, the last three, really helped build the capacity of the minority businesses. Now, we had feedback from at least 2 companies, and because of their experience working with the school projects, they were able, one particular company, and they were called Williams Windows and Glass, was able to go out and secure another project for over $2 million. That's a prime example of what building capacity of minority business can do. And we had another smaller company that did the landscapings for the school, and that company combined with another company on the project, and they were able to go out and be a prime for another school project in another locale. And so every time we do something like that, we're helping the community overall. And we would like to offer any assistance to Richmond Public Schools that we do for the city itself. So anything that we can do to help make sure that the work is done and that we are participating as minority community, we would love to be able to participate with you to do that.
Thank you, Pat, and we appreciate the good work you do for the city and do on behalf of the Black and brown communities and getting them involved in the procurement process. What I'd like to do now is hand it over to Bob Stone, who's the interim director or the director of capital projects for the city of Richmond, to give just a little bit more, flesh it out a little bit more for us on the construction of schools. Bob.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and members of City Council and School Board. I guess at first just like to talk about a little bit of the process we've used on the past schools construction, starting with procurement of design services. I guess that process by state procurement law is done through a process called competitive negotiation, where you issue a request for proposals, and architect, engineering firms submit proposals, and then they're evaluated on qualifications and technical merit. And by state code, cost is not a factor at that initial evaluation stage. It's precluded from being a factor, in fact. So, and in the past three schools, I guess the evaluation team was made up of a team of, I think 2 people from Richmond Public Schools and I think 3 from the city team. My predecessor in the capital projects role, Don Summers. I think the Public Works is bridge engineer, and Rosemary Green from Public Utilities were the city members. And I believe Darren Simmons and Tracy Epp were, I believe, the RPS members. But in that process, we're selecting an architect. We're not selecting a design at that point. So, you know, they submit with their proposal package, you know, designs that they've used in the past, and you know, the selection committee looks at those to see, okay, who's got designs that look to be suitable for the sites and the goals that we have for those projects. But, you know, like I say, that actual selection of which design and which prototype is done after award of the contract. So we award the design contract, and then that design architect starts engaging with RPS and the school staff and, you know, the school community to flesh out, you know, the needs of the school or the site. And in that process, they basically proposed, you know, several potential prototypes to the RPS team, and RPS made that selection of which prototype was going to be utilized, not the city. We were really kind of a referee or you know, manager of the process, but the process was really between the architect and the RPS team and community. So, you know, once that prototype was selected, you know, then you kind of moved into, okay, what customization do we need to make to that prototype to make it achieve the goals that RPS has for that school? So that sets off a series of meetings between the architect and, you know, the subject experts on RPS staff, be that the principals and Miss Epp on the academic side. It might be the food services director for the kitchen operations. It might be the transportation people. It could be the IT team at RPS. So all those meetings start going on to flesh out the specific details and needs that will go into customizing that prototype to come up with the final construction plans and specs. So it's, you know, so RPS is very intimately involved and really runs the show in selecting, you know, what features go into the school, even to the extent of the color schemes, some of the finish selections, carpets, tiles, floor tiles, and so forth, and architectural finishes on the exterior of the school in terms of the type of brick and the kind of the facade details and so forth. Those are all decisions made by RPS, not by the city, because it's ultimately RPS's school at the end of the day. So then I guess,
go ahead, Bob, please.
Okay, so and I guess the other, you know, these past 3 schools, due to a very compressed schedule where the construction contracting was done via a delivery process called construction management at risk. So, and to step back a little bit, there's really kind of 3 construction delivery methods that are typically used in projects. Kind of the default method is one called design, bid, build. It's a very linear process where you hire the architect does the design all the way to complete bid ready, 100% plans and specs. And then you go out and bid those during an IFB process where by state law, the contract award is made to the lowest responsive bidder. The other two processes are the CM at risk, which I mentioned. That's a process where sort of concurrently with hiring the architect and starting the design, you're hiring your construction contractor primarily based on qualifications and certain cost factors such as their proposed fee and bond costs and pre-construction service costs. So by state law under CM at risk, we're required to bring that, have that CM at risk contractor under contract before the completion of the schematic design phase of design. So that allows the construction contractor to then participate with the architect in the final design stages and make, value engineering suggestions. They can provide good, accurate pricing on the design as it's being developed. And, also they've got a stake in the design. It's still ultimately the architect's design, but it's good to have that contractor eyes on the project earlier. So then, when you get, bid ready documents, then they're handed over to the contractor and he goes out and formally solicits bids, competitive bids from the subcontractor community. So he'll put together, the site work package, the electrical package, the mechanical package, the painting work, the carpet, the windows, the concrete, all those get bid out to the subcontractor community. And again, by state law for this process, 90% of the contract is required to be subcontracted competitively to subcontractors. The CM at risk general contractor can only self-perform 10% of the contract work. So, and then they, submit those packages to the city and we review them and, either concur with their, recommendations as to which subcontractor to award a particular package to, or we tell them it doesn't look right and you go back and, either renegotiate it or rebid it or whatever, so that's, at the end of that, you come up with, a GMP guaranteed maximum price that includes contingency and allowance dollars. So, we know there's going to be changes that are going to be needed during the course of the project, and you'd be able to accommodate those through either the contingency bucket or the owner's allowance. So you got those two, pots of money in there that, so, in the case of ours, we haven't used, we're not going to use all of those. So our price at the end will be less than the guaranteed maximum price. In contrast with the design bid build process and a hard bid, the price for the final price will almost always be higher than the initial bid price because of change orders. Case in point, Henrico County, bid 2 new high schools, the new Tucker and the new Highland Springs. They bid those and awarded in summer of 2019, and they're completing construction now for an August 21 opening. But the average of those 2 bids for those 2 schools was $95.5 million. And our understanding is through talking to you know, one of our contractors is also the contractor on Tucker High School, so we kind of get a little bit of inside information. But you know, I think last time we talked to them a couple months ago on this, they were up to maybe $3.5 million of change order and more to come. So, yeah, you know, probably the average final cost of those two Henrico high schools is going to be at least $100 million each. You know, so, and those are, you know, relatively modest, 265,000 square foot nominal 2,000 student capacity. So it's similar in scope to what we're looking for a new George Wythe High School.
So all you have there, Bob?
So yeah, just so timeline wise, you know, there's several, depending on the approach taken, some degree, you know, drives the timeline. You know, if we desire to have a August 2024 opening, there's really one path that's going to get us there, and that's using a prototype design and using a CM at risk delivery method. Yeah, we need that concurrency of activity to meet that deadline. You know, other options, be it clean designs or, you know, design, bid, build, delivery, will generate completion dates either fall of 2025, 2026, or possibly even out into 2027.
Bob, thank you so much for that information. Thorough, very, very thorough. I appreciate that. And we'll have some questions, I imagine, after we're done with this topic at the end of this discussion period. I believe next, I wanted to offer Mr. Cameras the opportunity to walk through your initial research and next steps on the construction of these schools. I know members of the school board may have seen some of this, but I think the members of the city council who are with us this evening and members of the administration will probably be beneficial to understand the approach.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to kind of recap where we are, the board directed the administration to begin the process of hiring 3 positions, 2 in the area directly of construction, 1 in procurement. We have drafted those position descriptions and we'll be finalizing them and getting them over to the VDOE for approval. Our initial research suggests we'll likely need somewhere on the order of 10 to 15 positions. That's based on some analysis from the counties, given how they have staffed their teams for this kind of work. I think the ultimate cost is probably somewhere between $1.5 and $3 million. I don't know the final numbers on that just yet. We're continuing to do some work and really trying to move as expeditiously as possible on the initial 3 positions. But there are going to need to be additional construction positions, also additional legal capacity, additional capacity in our finance team, a couple other areas. We've been fortunate that the VDOE has put us in touch with an individual who has a significant experience in this field to provide some guidance about how to build out the team. So we're continuing to do that work, and I will shortly bring those additional positions to the board for consideration, as well as a financing proposal.
Thank you so much, Mr. Cameras. Before we open it up for questions, so does this approach that you have done research on and you've begun, does this allow for schools to open, George Wythe to open in August of 2024?
I do not believe that our current path leads us to an opening in the fall of 2024. The timeline that Mr. Stone shared, I believe, if memory serves correctly, as the slide isn't up, envisions a June 1 launch of an RFP. To be frank, we're several months away from being able to launch an RFP. We are just at the beginning stages of hiring the procurement personnel to be able to do so. Even once they're on board, then the process needs to begin of writing that RFP. And these are rather extensive RFPs given the nature of the work and the cost involved. So I don't think our current pathway is would realistically yield a fall 24 opening. That's based just on the fact that we need to staff up to be able to do this work. I think the other driver will ultimately be what the board decides in terms of the construction method. I don't know where the board will land on that. I have heard from some members, I'll let them speak for themselves, that they would prefer a design bid build approach. If that is the case, per Mr. Stone's commentary, I think we're looking at a fall 26, maybe fall 27 timeline, just given that that is a much more linear process, whereas the CM at risk process is a more parallel process.
So, Mr. Cameron, let me just reiterate again. So you've not seen any information that would provide for, the reason I'm asking this question, Mr. Cameron, is because I believe it's the shared goal, shared mission of local government. That's the city council, this administration, and the school board, which I thought was the school board shared, part of the shared goal was to ensure we got our students into a state-of-the-art facility as quickly as possible. And so when I hear 2027, 2026, 2025, when 2024 is, I guess, feasible from Mr. Stone's comments, it disappoints me for the students who would be attending George Wythe. And so there are no other pathways being explored or are available to the school board at this time?
I'm going to defer to the school board.
Okay. I saw there was in the chat, I saw there was a comment from Mr. Young.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Mr. Superintendent. Comment / perhaps question or both, if I may. And my question, if I could begin with that, would be for Mr. Stone, and specifically, I understood prior to this evening, and I think I heard him affirm that the J.R. Tucker and the new J.R. Tucker in Highland Springs were both the delivery method selected for those schools was design bid build, which is I would at the risk of repeating what he spoke to a moment ago, I understand advertised as the longer of the delivery methods. And I just wanted to confirm with Mr. Stone that, as I understand it, Henrico County put out their AE RFP on the street in October of 2018 for delivery or for construction opening is the best way to say that, September of this year. So and if I may, and if I could continue then with River City, what amounts to a new River City, I understand that the RFP for what would become CM at risk was put out on the street in May of 2018 for a September of 2020 opening. So I guess my question for Mr. Stone relates to Mr. Mayor, what you were inquiring about, chronology, and specifically if Henrico County could do a design bid build with an RFP that went out in the street in October 18, in other words, less than 3 years for construction of a project pretty comparable to what we're talking about. And if we, the city of Richmond, were able to issue an RFP that went out on the street in May of 2018, a little bit more than two years in advance of River City opening, again, a school pretty comparable, 1,500 students, I'm curious as to why longer timeline or chronology would be requisite now.
Mr. Stone.
I'll start by saying I don't know too much about the design process on Henrico's two high schools. I don't know to what extent they might have been based on prototype designs or whether they were, clean sheet of paper designs. That said, they did have, similar to what, we're proposing a 24-month or so construction window. I will say typically probably our construction contracting process probably takes a little bit longer than theirs does based on historical standards. But I mean, there is a path to a 25 opening with, I think, a clean design and a CM at risk. I just don't see, I don't see clean design and design bid build getting us anything earlier than 26. Sorry, my dog's barking out the window.
Thank you, Mr. Stone.
I don't know the full timeline of Henrico's design process.
And Mr. Mayor, if it's your pleasure, sir.
I'm sorry, you were breaking up there, Mr. Young.
I apologize, Mr. Mayor. If it's your pleasure, I do have one other inquiry, but if it's your, I can come back. You can come back to me later if you prefer.
Yeah, let's come back to you because I know Ms. Dorr was next on my list to speak. Ms. Dorr.
Good afternoon. I have a question and a comment. My question is, there's been a little bit of confusion regarding if the RFP has been written by the city. How easy is that to transfer the RFP to RPS? I think there was potentially some ideas on the table that RFP could simply be transferred over to us and then we could get the ball rolling now. So I was wondering if you or someone on your team could speak to the feasibility of that and just give us some clarity around the legality, et cetera. And my comment is that, in regards to, is there another way? My strong preference would be that we work to phase it. I believe that schools should build schools, and I believe we should phase in this budget. But given that we're launching in the middle of a pandemic year, we already have so much on our plate, and we're looking at a $1.5 to $3 million operating budget overrun. On top of a delay, it doesn't seem prudent right now to take this on all at once. So my strong preference would be that we move forward with Plan A as it relates to George Wythe, get those kiddos into a new modern high school as soon as possible, and then we work on a multi-year plan to make sure that we do this and we do it right.
Thank you, Ms. Dorr. To answer your question, I'm going to ask Ms. Burrell, who is my director of procurement services for the city of Richmond. Ms. Burrell, first, is the request for proposal for George Wythe ready? And second, can you please explain why it cannot be shared?
At this point, Mayor, we've had the media ask us for a copy of the solicitation, the RFP. And obviously with the conversations that have been going on right now, we would not and cannot release that RFP because it amounts to giving a preemptive strike to those who might participate in the competition in the future. With respect to handing over the document, as I described in a city council meeting recently, that is the least of the effort required to procure the services of a design professional. The heavy lifting comes with having the procurement personnel prepared and ready to assume responsibility for doing that work. And based on what I understood from Superintendent Cameras, they haven't yet hired that procurement individual who would be responsible. So the answer is, with any ambiguity around this process, the city cannot release that RFP and would not do so in order to ensure that there is no unfair competition.
Ms. Burrell, it sounds like to me that one could easily replicate the RFP, copy the RFP, but you really just can't copy process at this late date, correct?
That is absolutely correct, Mayor.
Thank you, Ms. Burrell.
You're welcome.
Ms. Gibson.
Thank you, Mayor. So look, I have been following this issue regarding school construction for quite a while now. You know, back in 2016, as a parent, as a constituent, I was looking at then Mayor Dwight Jones' budget, saw numbers for how much there were claims on how much had been spent on schools, and I inquired. I submitted a FOIA and I asked. And the numbers that came up didn't even match the numbers on the budget, right? So that raised flags for me. And then as I kind of grew to understand the process by which schools were built, where you know, the entity that's using the building is not the entity that owns the project, you know, it raised more questions. So this is something that I've been, you know, frustrated with as a constituent for a very long time. And, you know, we're talking about facts. And so I've done my homework. I work professionally in the building materials industry. I, you know, have a master's degree in architecture, and I recognize that the way that we're talking about this, even today, doesn't align with really the way this industry works. You know, anyone who would suggest that, you know, rushing a project does not come with consequences does not know anything about building a school building, or any building for that matter. So, and so I think it is incumbent upon us that we have folks involved in this that are experts in this matter. So, you know, the concerns that I noted in terms of how much we were spending to build schools back in 2016, those same concerns were also highlighted by the city's own auditor in its 2019 report, which flagged miscommunication, additional unnecessary charges, and all in all, lots of failure as it pertains to building a school. So I'm not speaking on this out of turn, you know, by our own city auditor has identified the same things that I've identified, right? And that some of my colleagues have identified. So, you know, in 2018, I sat on a board when and I was thrilled that, you know, we had the money from the meals tax to be able to build new schools. And we were told that the city was going to issue an RFP in 2018. That didn't happen. There was no communication. There was no discussion as to why that did not happen in 2018 as we were promised. And look, I've got the receipts, you know, like I'm not making this up. So, okay, so the school didn't move forward. That RFP was not issued back in 2018. Okay. Then I find out in the newspaper that the new schools that are going to be built are going to cost $30 million more than we had originally estimated. You know, so when we're talking about making sure our kids get a new building, you know, I don't know about all of you, but not only am I insisting that we get those kids in George Wythe in a modern facility as soon as possible, I want every school to be addressed as soon as possible. And so when we make decisions that cause school construction to go over by tens of millions of dollars, not only did we push the students at George Wythe and kick them down the can, but we've also kicked the can down for the students at Woodville Elementary School, for making updates to our technical center, to every school. I mean, in my district, we need to do some work to John Marshall. We need to do some work to Ginter Park Elementary School. We need to do some work to Obama Elementary School, because that school certainly doesn't live up to his name. We have work to do. So it's disappointing that we are at this place, and frankly, it doesn't make a lot of sense. It doesn't make a lot of sense because City Council adopted its own resolution, which said the very same thing that ours said. So City Council agreed in 2018 that schools should build schools. The majority, myself and a majority of board members, expressed incredible concern over the cost of schools in 2019. And so now here we are. And I think that personally, this time would be well spent to figure out how we can make a transition. Now, the other thing that doesn't make any sense is that we're talking about procuring getting a copy of the city's RFP when the city has acknowledged that the schools haven't told the city which way it's going to build the schools yet. I mean, so if the city sent us a letter inquiring, which way are you going to build the schools? Construction management at risk, design, bid, build, from our chief of staff, let us know. There's been no direction given. So if there is an RFP, then I'm assuming that you've got multiple versions because the schools haven't made a decision, and that's exactly the issue that I'm talking about. The schools have not made a decision. The schools have not made a decision as to how big George Wythe is going to be, but the city has. The city decided that we were going to be renovating the Altria building before the school board made a vote on it. There are issues in this process. So, look, we're talking about construction management at risk and value engineering on building designs that had already been value engineered. We were building based on a prototype that when those schools were built, they were among the cheapest in the entire state. Then we build them, go through a quote unquote value engineering process, and they're the most expensive in the state. So suffice it to say, there's work to be done. I am thankful that a majority of my colleagues agree that schools should build schools, just as I am thankful that a majority of city council members believe that schools should build schools. And I think that to make productive use of this time, the question is, how can we collaborate and work together on and do a bit better on that than we've done in the past. So yes, if there is documentation that has been developed regarding school construction, I would welcome that the city provide transfer of those documents, and let's put the bickering aside. The democratic process has done what it does, and let's move forward and build these schools that we've promised to do.
Thank you, Ms. Gibson. Before we move forward, I just want to make sure that we have to get the facts straight here. First for Ms. Burrell, when was the RFP for the 2020 opening schools issued?
The Design Professional Services RFP was issued on May 15th, 2018. And I heard that we didn't issue in 2018. It in fact was May 15th, 2018, about 2.5 months after council approved the meals tax.
Thank you, Ms. Burrell. And also, I don't know whether or not there's a question from Mr. Cameras or Mr. Saunders, who I see as well, or Mr. Steidel might be on the line as well. But the question is, the estimates that were used by the school board? Who was the author of those estimates?
Mayor, I'm gonna let the superintendent respond.
My understanding is those estimates were created by Mr. Kranz, who was the interim superintendent prior to my arrival, and before that, the chief operating officer. My understanding is those estimates were developed several years ago, and that they were placeholders. I think we can agree that there are always escalations due to inflation and just the normal march of time. I don't know that those estimates were rooted in any deep analysis that I have seen. And so I don't think any of them, quite frankly, at this point, are particularly accurate, which is why I asked the board to support an effort to conduct a new facilities assessment so that we have updated numbers. But again, I was not here when those numbers were created, so I can't speak to the specifics of how they came about. But at a minimum, I think we all know they were generated several years prior to the point at which construction began on those facilities, during which time construction costs increased rather precipitously.
I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Cameras. And I thought I was going to add Ms. Lynch to go.
I would like to speak, Mr. Stoney, and I apologize. So, because we're talking about money, and like I said, I'd really like to move forward rather than move back. But when it comes to those estimates, not only did Mr. Kranz come up with them, who is a professional, we all have much respect for him, but those same budget numbers were also reflected in the estimates provided by architects RRMM, as they were required to do in the RFP that was issued by the city. So to suggest that those estimates were off is that they were old. It's simply an oversimplification, and it's not true. So I ask you, Mayor Stoney, I would like to hear, how can we move forward?
And Ms. Gibson, I appreciate your question, but we want to make sure that everybody gets an opportunity to speak. We don't want any monopolization of time here. And so you've spoken, and we will now move on to the next person. Thank you for your comment. Ms. Gibson, Ms. Lynch, I think you stated you may have some questions. I'll give you the floor. It's City Council, the floor.
Yeah, I really want to hear from Ms. Gibson. I appreciate what she's saying, because I think, I think we're, let's address the elephant in the room. Procurement doesn't always go well, right? Like, we've made mistakes. We have. We've made mistakes in various other places, not just in our schools. Made it all, there's been situations that each one of us can point to in our districts. We can point to within the superintendent's office when we've procured IT and other things, right? Bureaucracy and procurement is tough. Why? That's our fault. I'm looking at both of us, school board and city council, and we can fix that. I don't know. I think at this point, I really want to listen. I'm really appreciating where Kenya is coming from, and I want to hear from, my colleague in the 5th and Mrs. White and all the others, because I think we have to listen to each other. And I think if you cut to the core, at least when I've spoken with my other colleagues, I think when you cut to the core of it, we're talking about getting to the same end product. I'm hearing that we don't want the same prototype. We may not want to go with the same contractor that we have right now. We don't like that the maybe instead of it being a review process, it could be more collaborative. And we want to think differently about our school spaces. And those are all really good things. And also, we need to do better contract monitoring and oversight. Throughout the entire school process, the only time that those finances were audited was way back in, 2018 or 2019, when the city council auditor did an audit. We didn't develop a tight and strict oversight process for that. We didn't say, hey, are the cost of materials and labor that we're getting in fair to the market, and industry standards? We didn't do that. That's our fault. So how do we work together and move forward and really listen to each other's concerns? Because I'm hearing the frustration, and I'm hearing from talking with other various members that we also want the same thing. The policy debate is, do we need to create a whole nother policy, a whole nother department to do that and impede our timeline? Or do we work together and try to create better oversight and better collaboration? Because isn't this what this education compact is all about, right? Isn't this what it is all about, is working together and trying to find a solution and a better way to get to a better place for our students? Because I think we can do it better, but I would take the onus and say it's on city council and school board to do that. But I want to hear from all of the school board members, because I think we can get to the core of what these issues are without impeding our timeline or building or spending more money to build a whole nother department. But I think we got to do it. We got to collaborate on that and get to that place. But just wanted to open up with it.
Thank you, Councilwoman. And with all due respect, Councilwoman, I'm going to be very, very selfish on behalf of the students over at George Wythe. That is not my priority in this discussion. My priority in this discussion is making sure those students get a school that opens in August of 2024. That's the bottom line for me. That's the bottom line. And any date after that, any date in 2025, in 2026, in 2027 is unacceptable. And that is my message to the school board. That's my message to the city council. That's my message to the public. Any school that opens beyond August of 2024 for the students at George Wythe is unacceptable. Ms. Rizzi.
And I hear you, Mr. Mayor, but I think that my colleagues on school board, I want to hear from them and figure out how we get to that resolution and collaborate on a solution without impeding that timeline. I think we're all committed to that.
I don't know if that's the case, Ms. Lynch. I don't know if that's the case. I would hesitate to say that is the commitment is to have this school open in 2024, because I've yet to see a pathway from Mr. Cameron on how to do that. Ms. Rizzi.
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Stoney. Wow, this is scary. I've never done anything like this in my entire life, but I'm going to do it tonight. Talk about monopolization of time. I'm really feeling frustrated that we started with slides that presented just facts that were curated by one segment of this, governing collaboration we've got going on here. And school board members were not invited to produce slides and present them that represent, and I agree with Councilwoman Lynch, and I love what she just said, because she's the only one who's reached out to me and even asked, what are your goals here? What would you like to see? She's the only one who legitimized our concerns. The rest seem to take this kind of poison pill strategy, right? Where you went in and you immediately, the day after this resolution, we voted on it, turned it into, oh, they're going to delay George Wythe. Oh, they're lying. These facts are not what they're saying is true. They're lying. I mean, literally, people honestly call me a liar. And I don't think that's respectful. I don't think that respects us in terms of what we were elected to do, which is lead the schools. And me, someone who spent my early years, like the first time I was ever in a classroom, it was in George Wythe High School. And to portray me as though somehow I have some intention to delay the building of the school is ludicrous and unfair, and it was cruel. Now, I supported this resolution because I looked at all of the facts. I looked at a lot of the points that my colleague, Ms. Gibson, has already made. And you know, I really believe, and I looked at other examples, right, which we haven't had the privy, you know, we haven't been like presented, Mr. Stone, with examples of where schools, building schools actually, you know, is successful, because there are places where it is successful and has worked very well. We haven't seen specific examples of design, bid, build that actually work well, because they do in other localities. Everything presented here tonight has been one-sided, as has this discussion been, as far as I can perceive it. And I do appreciate. Now, we don't fully agree on everything, right? But Councilwoman Lynch said, hey, what do you want to see? What do you want? What are your goals? And how can we work together to get them achieved? No one else has done that. No one. And so, you know, instead of sitting around and telling lies, I mean, I'm not calling anybody a liar, but I don't appreciate being called a liar, because I have a different perspective than someone else. So that, you know, that first of all was a slap in my face. Okay, this is what serving on the school board is going to be like, right? I had a question for Mr. Stone. I would like you to repeat to me who was on the advisory group for the last 3 schools that were built.
So starting with the RFP selection panel for the architectural services, I believe that was Ms. Epps and Darren Simmons, who was Chief Operating Officer at the time, I believe, from RPS. And my predecessor, Don Summers, Dr. Kim, the city's bridge engineer, and Rosemary Green, Deputy Director from Public Utilities, were the evaluation committee for the architectural procurement. For the selection of the CM at risk contractor, it was myself, having just taken over from Don Summers at that point, Dexter Good, one of our senior capital project managers in Public Works, Bobby Hathaway, Darren Simmons, and I think Kevin Lucas from the city's Office of Minority Business Development.
Okay, so no regular old community members or?
No, you really you can't have community members involved in a city procurement, and I guess I would defer to Ms. Burrell to jump in and address that if need be.
So neither group could have used the input of community members, or
no. Once those processes start, there's confidentiality agreement requirements. You know, we can't even necessarily talk to other city employees about the ongoing procurement. We can talk to
right. So at what stage? Go ahead, Mr.
I'm want to make sure we am I unclear about? I'm very unclear about. Did the community have any input on the design that they wanted to see, or where did that occur in the process?
Yeah, once the architect was hired, the RPS and the community and school board had input, and ultimately the school board made the final vote as to which prototype was chosen. That was not the city that made that decision. That was RPS and the school board that made that decision.
Right, and so these are, again, prototypes. And my question then is, you know, things like color schemes and bricks and paint, that's all very superficial. I'm wondering how much the community, and I've asked for evidence of this, people have promised it, I haven't seen anything yet, how much community input had to do with the actual design of the school. Because brick colors and, you know, I mean, sure, that stuff is nice and cool, but that's not really about, you know, the functionality of the school or what the community would like to see in terms of how the school is built.
Well, I mean, I guess with the selection of the prototype, by and large came the selection of, okay, there's a wing for kindergarten, there's a wing for first grade, second grade. you know.
But they're not really personalized to the community. I mean, yeah, there were prototypes, and that's my question. I don't want to
That's true.
debate this any longer.
That's true. But the advantage of that is a shorter design timeline, probably significantly lower design costs than starting with a clean sheet of paper and designing a school from scratch. Our design costs were probably half or less of what they would have been had we started with, you know, a clean sheet of paper and designed a whole brand new school.
And I hear that, but I think
we did it in probably half to a third of the time it would have taken to do it.
Thank you, Mr. Stone.
Okay.
I hear that, but what's ultimately best for our students? You know, a well-designed, well-planned, personalized school that might take a little bit more. I don't know that that's the case really, or a
Or
prototype.
spending 2 more years in an old ESH Green elementary school or in trailers.
Well, you know, in
Most of
George
their
Wythe,
schools
they've been
were.
put off for years and years already. You know, I've been in Richmond, you know, 30 plus years. I was raised in out of Richmond. I know what George Wythe had looked like when I did my practicum almost 30 years ago. It looks the same now. So why the rush right now? You know, I mean, certainly I want it built as soon as possible, but I want it also to represent the best we can offer those kids at the same time.
Mr. Cameron, did you have a point of information? I saw you.
I just wanted to re-articulate, as I shared at the school board meeting earlier this week, that there was extensive community input. You know, once the prototype was selected, I'm sorry, before the prototype was selected, I remember myself physically being at some of the community meetings at ESH Green with the big boards up of the prototypes, the pros and cons and so on. And all of that information was compiled and ultimately led to our recommendation to the board. And then it was the board that voted to adopt the prototype, and then the community input continued for any modifications to those prototype designs. And as I shared on Monday, I will gather up all the evidence of those meetings to share with everybody who is interested.
Thank you, Mr. Cameron. We'll go to Ms. Page.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We need to stick to the facts, and we need to stop misleading the public, because I was here when Mr. Krantz gave those overestimates, $30 million. There was no studies, no third party, no in-house study that were able to justify those numbers. So we need, first, number one, we need to stop referring to that, and we need to stop giving out misinformation and misleading the public. This process, yes, we need to work together so that we can move forward and give the best that we can to our children. Does this process need to be enhanced? Sure, that's with any process. But in order for us to get there, we need to work together. Because when we talk about the positions on the school side, we are speaking of that in absence of the memorandum of understanding with the Virginia Department of Education. So, and that means it's approval process for new positions. And the superintendent just stated, we voted 3, but the superintendent just stated possibly 10 to 15. So again, we need to work together, because as Ms. Risen said, I've been in Richmond all my life, except for when I left to go to college. But beside that, I've been here all my life. I went to George Wythe. I walked the halls of George Wythe. We cannot have this fight, this infighting that we have had in the past. This process has been we have worked in collaboration. And I think we need to continue to work in collaboration. Is there room for enhancement? Enhance the process? Sure there is. But we need to move forward, work together, because I don't believe that we don't all have the same mission. How we get there may be different, but we need to have a discussion how to move this process forward, because our kids cannot wait. And again, we make decisions in absence of community engagement, in absence of lack of transparency. So it seems like transparency and community engagement works for some groups, but not work for others. So again, let us move forward, speak the truth, speak the facts, and stop misleading the public. And let's be good stewards of the public dollars. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Page. And Ms. Page, all I will say is it is the city's goal is to build these schools in 2024. And that's what we want to work on. We are willing to collaborate. I appreciate you recognizing that collaboration, Ms. Page, but the city is here to collaborate on a school that's going to open for the students at George Wythe in 2024, not 2025, not 2026, not 2027. We're here to collaborate on a school that opens in 2024. I would now like to offer an opportunity to.
I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor. Can I just add one more thing? I apologize.
Well, can we get back to you, Ms. Page? Because I want to
certainly, because I do not want to. I want everyone to have the opportunity to speak.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much. I want to see you now offer an opportunity to speak from the City Council. Any of the leadership from the City Council. We are joined here today by Councilwoman, the Council President, Cynthia Newbill, and the Council Vice President, Ellen Robertson. I want to offer them an opportunity. If not, then we will go to Councilwoman Jordan. Anything from council leadership?
Mr. Mayor, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, I can.
Yeah. So first, I'd like to say thank you to everyone on the call this evening. This is a priority for us all. I understand that maybe our process needs further enhancement. I get that. But I also understand that our children deserve to have a school built in a timely fashion without undue delay. And so there is an opportunity, if there is a desire to transition to RPS building schools, that can be worked on without delaying this school. Proceed with this process that we've initiated and work collaboratively to move forward while you build that bench strength. But our children should not, again, our children should not suffer and have delay of access to new state-of-the-art school because we are transitioning the process by which schools are built. We are set up and geared to go. I think we need to move forward with that, enhance the process, and if further engagement is desired. But then, and if schools then are building their bench strengths to stand up the infrastructure for schools construction, that's fine. But in the moment, that's not what exists. And in the process of trying to stand that up versus proceeding with what we have on the table, refining the process so our children can have an opportunity to have state-of-the-art facilities. I think that is the primary objective, and we work out everything else. Thank you.
Thank you,
Mr.
Dr.
Mayor.
Newbill. Ms. Robertson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, everyone. School board members, as well as my colleagues on City Council, Mr. Mayor, and all of our support team that are working together. The great challenge that we have before us is tremendous. And it's been a conversation that has been had for quite some time. We are not at the place that we want to be as it relates to our school buildings, our school facilities, and our needs to build additional schools. There is a greater need for collaboration between City Council, the mayor, and the school board, and the citizens of the city of Richmond, the taxpayers, the persons who pay their tax dollars every day and expect us to make the best decision that we can, and to do the best job that we can to spend and to use taxpayers' dollars wise. This has been a very trying year for all of us, and I want to commend schools for the work that you have done to continue to educate our children remotely. I know that's been challenging. It's been extremely challenging for you, and it's been very challenging for parents as well, and certainly for our students. So I want to commend you all and encourage you all to take a break and re-energize as we move through the upcoming year. The challenge that's before us right now is that we have been working collaboratively together with a committee of city administration and school board. Unfortunately, I'm not sure that there was any council members that were on the committee that served in that capacity of looking at how we move through the process of actually building a school. So I'd like to say, first of all, that as we look at collaboration, that we include both school board and city council members, the mayor's staff and the mayor's office, as well as a part of this collaborative moving forward, so that we are all at the table making decisions collaboratively together in the process. I only learned of the school board's concerns as it relates to their not pleased with the services that the city has provided as it relates to building previous schools that resulted in this resolution to for schools to build their own school building. I learned of this as a part of the resolution that was passed by the school board members. I respect you as the elected officials to represent the interests of schools for the city of Richmond. And I respect your decision that you make for whatever reasons that you make those decisions. I trust that they are in the best interest of Richmond Public Schools and for the city of Richmond, and especially for the students of Richmond. So I think we are at a place that if school board has made their decision, and they've made their decision publicly, that they are going to build this school and build schools for Richmond Public Schools. And I will respect and honor your decision and your vote, just as I know that you honor and respect the decisions and the vote that council makes. I'm sure that your deliberations have been extensive as we experience the same thing in our deliberations. To move forward, I think it is important that we recognize the role that the city will play in the process. I do think that there is an opportunity that we do not want to miss. And that is your superintendent has indicated that you do not have the in-house staff and capacity to be able to do the work that needs to be done. It appears to me that the city does have on staff the type of staff with the qualifications to move forward with the building of this building. When we talk about collaboration, I think it's one thing as to who is who's taking charge and the ownership of doing the construction, and what that role means, and if schools see any value added to the decision that you've made to build the school, that the resources that the city have, as to whether or not you want the city resources in that process. And if the city's resources are used to assist in the construction of the school, would that address any concerns that the delay of the 10 to 15 persons and costs that schools will incur as it relates to moving forward with the construction? Our task and our job that is before us is to utilize the taxpayers' dollars that are paying all of our salaries, that is paying all of the costs to build the schools, to maximize the use of all of those resources collectively to get to the end of the road as it relates to building the school. The bottom line is that, we're going to have to hire helping hands, if I will, to do all of this work, from the architect to the consultants that will have to be brought on, to the procurement officers, and whoever else. If we need to seriously think of ourselves as partners, which we are, because at the end of the day, every tax dollar that is levied, only the city of Richmond have the authority to levy those dollars. And so at the end of the day, Richmond City is a partner, and we are a huge partner, because the 100 million plus that may be necessary to build schools, the city of Richmond has to levy our taxpayers to put that money on the table to make it possible. So we are a partner irregardless. The question is, do we want to levy the resources of both the city staff and the school board and your staff and expertise, which has to be the driver and the leader with great community input, to design what is needed for each one of our schools, because each one of them are uniquely different to be based on that community. So I think where we are and where I would like to see us go is to recognize the fact that the board has made a decision that they are going to be take the responsibility of building the school. Question at hand, are there resources that the city have that can be of value, and we can figure out a way how we work together to make those things work together, so that we can keep our mind focused on what our main objective is, and that is to build the quality of schools that needs to be built. And if Superintendent Cameras, you need expert leaders on board today that can assist in the logistics of putting everything in place to make this construction, put this construction on task, and the city have those resources on our staff, I would hope that we could find a way to have a development plan that maximizes the use of the taxpayers' dollars and all of us being taxpayers' employees to move forward and get a building built in a manner that meets all of our expectations, including our timeline, and that we would leverage our staff rather than feel that it's necessary to have independent staff in order to move this project forward. Mr. Mayor, I don't have anything else to add to what I'm saying. I have built and I've done construction from purchasing the land to moving the tenants in. So I know the challenge of doing construction. And I do know that change orders will happen no matter how well you plan it. It always happens. However, we've got expertise and talents that our taxpayers have already paid for. And I think they expect us to use them collectively to get our job done.
Thank you so much, Ms. Robertson. Ms. Jordan.
Thank you. I'll just kind of start off where Councilmember Robinson ended off. We are in the tail end of our budget right now, and it's been absolutely excruciating fighting over dollars for all the priorities in the city. And I do feel a great responsibility for what we do as council and what we do as school board members with those dollars. There's just not enough to go around. There just isn't. So what makes me stressed out about this situation is the timing of it, and that, you know, this wasn't brought up when the school board budget was presented or voted on. And I actually do support schools, you know, being more involved and maybe even fully taking on the whole process. But what makes me nervous about shifting right now is that you've said you don't want to rush, bad outcomes come with rushing, but if you're rushing to try and staff up and create a new process, that gives me concern. And I know we can, like, absolutely, we can do better. Following school board and the budget of the city is why I ran. That's how I started following all of this. But we have now a team that has done a couple schools, right? So there is experience to do better. And I would honestly, I will respect whatever the school board does, but I would hope that they would start to staff up on their own, get prepared for taking on this task, and be as involved as they can through this process. And if we need to add processes, 100%. But I just am very nervous about this switch and this timing. And, you know, the longer we wait, it does get more expensive. And I just don't see how this helps the overall process right now. And I also, you know, feel concerned about, you know, when was the community brought into this change? And this would give more time to bring the community into this goal. And but again, I respect the school board, what they want to do. I enjoy my relationship with Mariah White. I think it's been great serving on this with you so far for 3 months. We've got 3 years to go. And I'm hopeful that whatever continuing conversations happen in this meeting, we will get to a good place, because I know we all want the city to thrive. We all want the schools to be built, you know, to the best of everyone's abilities and for our students and our families. And unfortunately, I'm going to have to watch the rest of this on video later because I have a family commitment with my daughter. But thanks for everyone for coming out and for the comments and for sharing the frustrations. And we can do better together. I just know it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Jordan, for those comments. I basically want to allow for everyone to have an opportunity to speak, and then we can probably wrap up for tonight, because I know the street lights are coming on. So I want to give an opportunity to Ms. White and Ms. Burke as well to finalize. And don't know whether we'll be able to finish it all tonight, but let's see what we can do. Let's see what we can do. Ms. White.
I'd like to say good evening, Mayor Stoney. Good evening also City Council and school board members. I've been sitting back and I've been listening. And I have to say, City Council Robinson, I do agree with you. Truth to power. And some of you may know that I have advocated for a while for buildings in the city of Richmond. And what I have to say is that today I sit here and I'm glad that everybody is here together because I feel personally that we have to work together, collaboration, and no one should move forward until this board has a good feeling of what is going to happen. I just came on this board 3-4 months now, 1 on 5, and we didn't have a talk. I didn't even get any information. I had to go on what I felt on my decision based on years of buildings. I couldn't even talk intelligent to my constituents without me being armed with tools. See, I like to read my own things, make my own decisions. And I found that that decision that I made was accurate, school build schools. Why did I feel that way? Because we had schools that had, right after they were built, you had a gym floor that was out of commission for about 2 years. You had, you still have schools that have temporary occupancy permits. Why? Those things, I'm not sure that we just like oversight them, or was they oversight? By you having Richmond Public Schools being in charge, and I know that the school board chair and the vice chair, and I heard that you do your weekly meetings. Somewhere there was something was missing. And I hear you, Mayor Stoney, you saying one school. I need to have it done in 2024. But Woodville is also a school that was on that same list years ago. And I heard somebody say they were on the board years ago. The same district knows that that school was there the same time. And if we're going to do one school, we need to do both schools. They're both in need. And I know 2024 is the election year, and everybody always during the election year, we want to put a shovel in the ground and look like we did something in front of our constituents. These are our children. Yes, I went to RPS too. I'm like Miss Richmond. I went to every high school in Richmond. I know the schools by heart, and I have children who are in RPS. That's what makes me so passionate about RPS. And so when I look at it, I'm listening here, and I'm saying, well, if we don't have something, why can't the city council help us out? You understand that we're trying to hire our own procurement, and we want to hire our own construction staff. But my concern is that you have subject matter experts on RP. You have subject matter experts that on RPS we really don't have. We're gonna need someone to score the RFPs. So would the city be able to do that? Because you have that expertise. See, I know a little bit too about procurement, large dollars, long-term contracts, all of those things. I know about those also. So when I hear things that the amount of money that it increased during the time that it was built, and Mr. Stone, I have a question for you. I don't know if you're still on the line anywhere.
Ms. White, he is. Please move.
So Mr. Stone, when those contracts, I heard the amount that you were saying that they increased. Were they expedited?
Are you referring to Henrico's?
No, I'm referring to Richmond Public Schools. I'm not into Henrico. I only stay on one locality. Was those contracts expedited? Huh?
These
couldn't hear you.
past 3 schools that were built?
Yes. Was
I
any of
would
those
say they were on
no, was any
aggressive
of those
timeline.
contracts, excuse me?
They were on fairly aggressive timelines, yes.
No, that's not the question. Fairly aggressive is not the question. Were any of those contracts expedited? I know procurement. Was any of those contracts expedited?
Yes, I would say they got preferential treatment over normal.
You're still not answering the question, Mr. Stone. You're telling me you're using all these. Yes, they were. Okay, so that's where the money came up to why these schools cost so much. Let's get to the real truth.
I would say it was more a factor of the market conditions at the time. We were in a full employment economy with a lot of construction going on in the Richmond market at the time.
Yes, that may be true, Mr. Stone, but it costs double to expedite. I do know that. It costs double to expedite. That's where your money came in when you came into your schools. I don't know if the schools knew that, because the RPS is the ones that were supposed to approve that. Now, I don't know who approved that, but it was somebody in RPS. Like I said, Mr. Stone, I know a little bit about procurement. But as I was saying, I have to agree with Councilwoman Robinson. She spoke truth to power. And we can't leave any children behind in Richmond, not just one school, because it's George Wythe, not because one school, because we had a couple people stand out there in a podium and said that George Wythe needs fixing. Also does Woodville. Woodville needs fixing and is even older. So I'm not understanding why we're going after one school when all our kids need schools. And I know, Mr. Cameras, you made a priority. You said George Wythe, you said the Technical Center, and you said Woodville. And one thing I don't do is I'm strictly business when it's strictly business. And when it comes to children, I am strictly business when it comes to them. And we as a board just coming in, we haven't even had a conversation with Mr. Cameras on this. No conversation. And is that respect? Is that respect to this new board? Yes, it needs to have a developmental plan, needs to be put out, because I'm reading charts that I haven't even seen. Board members may have seen it, previous board members, but did they let us know as new board members? I had to base my decision, schools built on schools, based on long-term, because it's been 11 years since I've been coming to this city council on schools. Long-term facts and examples. So yes, I would like to see a developmental plan, and I would love for us to see us collaborate. And the objective is to try to make this happen somehow, some way, but our schools need to be built. Thank you.
And thank you, Ms. White. And I just want to make sure we correct the record, because when I hear things thrown out there like double cost, I don't know whether Mr. Stone or anyone from the city staff, whether or not there were any double costs added to it. I think that may not be true. So I want to make sure we correct the record with an aggressive timeline does not double the cost. An expedited timeline does not double the cost. Can you correct the record for me, Mr. Stone?
Do you have a procurement person here?
Ms. Burrell's here.
The procurement activity was accelerated. The actual construction windows, particularly for the 2 elementary schools, were about normal. About 18 months for a 100,000 square foot elementary is not. It's a slightly aggressive, but it's not a super accelerated schedule. I think compared to Chesterfield's Midlothian Middle School, we had a few months less to build a roughly 25% larger school. So that was a little bit on the more aggressive side of the schedule. But
thank you, Mr. Stone.
I think the major cost factor was the economic climate that we were in at the time. the contractors were bidding subcontractor work. So.
Thank you, Mr. Stone. And I just want to make sure to all the elected officials here, this is Public Servant Appreciation Week, just like it is Teacher Appreciation Week. Let's make sure we respect our public servants like Mr. Stone and others when we talk to these administrators. They come to work here every day to do their best on behalf of the city of Richmond. And I request all elected officials not to badger our administrators. Ms. Burke.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and good evening, everyone. Thank you for having this meeting this evening, and I know it was time for us to have another compact meeting. So I know it was scheduled for Memorial Weekend, so I'm glad that we're together now. And I look forward to the continued collaboration with the city. Having served on the JCT since 2018, I thought things were going well. We collaborated, we disagreed often. We would agree to disagree, then come back and agree. But there was a process in place that was open to the public. So it wasn't that anything was done in hiding. I also think back to how COVID affected the process of building the new buildings. I think about the former presidents, the steel tariffs, that wasn't in place earlier when that estimate was made in terms of how much it's going to cost to build new buildings. I know how hard it was to get certain equipment and certain materials. Rather than within our state or two, we had to travel to many states, the contractors, and we had to wait on that. I know that sites had to close. Marsh closed more than once in building that building because of COVID. The unfortunate part with this process, I am totally in favor of schools building their own schools. I don't have a problem with that at all. The process bothered me, and it continues to bother me. Number one, school system asked for support to build schools. The city council and mayor provided us with the meals tax. I'm grateful to have had that, and hopefully we'll continue to. However, if we had had this conversation when the resolution was brought before us on the board, to have community input as well. I just want our children to be, all the schools to be proud. Of course, we're going to have a new Woodville, a new Fairfield. That's inevitable. However, my concern right now is the timing. The timing as in, we're getting ready for our children to come back into a safe environment, hopefully, a clean environment, being COVID minded of what to expect from day to day, week to week. And our children already suffered enough with pandemics before COVID pandemic. So as we continue to move along in the best interest of every child throughout the city of Richmond, our children cannot continue to wait. They deserve the best. So while we in Richmond Public Schools have tasked the administration to revisit our budgets, to look at hiring 3 to 4 to maybe 15 positions, I want us to be mindful of where that money is going to surface, where it's going to come from at this point. Because we have children that are struggling and behind in reading and math, buildings that are not up to par to handle technology correctly. So it is what it is. However, I thank City Council. I thank you, Mr. Mayor. I thought the collaboration was well. I just want to do right by our children. I think we all are passionate about that. But I want to let it be on record too that I appreciate the effort that has been in place. And I'm just, as Ms. Jordan stated, the timing when we think in regards to meeting the needs of every child. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ms. Burke. And I'm going to wrap this up for this evening. And I will wrap it up on this note. I love hearing from members of the school board, members of the city council talk about the C word, and that is collaboration. But also I believe in another C word, and that is compromise. We have to do both of those to ensure that our kids get the best. No matter what zip code they live in, we got to do both of those, collaborate and compromise to ensure our kids get the best. And right now, I personally do not believe that our children are getting the best, particularly those who go to George Wythe. And you're right. Some have stated there are more schools in this George Wythe. You are exactly right. But if the city does not create the priorities of which school is next, that priority is the responsibility of the Richmond School Board. Nonetheless, we owe those children over at George Wythe to get into a school as quickly as possible, the best facility possible. Yes, we can all agree that that school has been decrepit and has looked the same way for decades. But shouldn't that put some urgency behind us to ensure that they get the best as quickly as possible? It was the school board that made the priorities, and I'm glad to collaborate with the school board to ensure that we brought those priorities to make them a reality in River City, in Henry Marsh, and in Cardinal. 2024 should be the North Star for our kids in getting them to a new George Wythe and getting them a tech center or whatever school that the school board prioritizes. From what I've heard tonight, and I may not see, maybe I may see differently moving forward, I have not seen a timeline beyond the one that the city has offered that allows for us to open in 2024. And if there is a timeline beyond 2024 that can be offered by the school board or from the city council, I would love to see it. The public would love to see it, but we have not seen such. And so it's my hope over the course of the next few days and weeks that we can come to an agreement to find a way to bring George Wythe to a reality in 2024. If not, then we will have done a disservice to the families, to the taxpayers, and to the students who attend George Wythe. Thank you all for participating and attending in this discussion. I appreciate your participation, and I'm looking forward to your collaboration and compromise moving forward. Good night.
Thank you.
Good night. Thank you.
Everyone.